Mark Walter is the reason the Dodgers aren't getting over the hump in the postseason. That's what one writer thinks. Should the Dodgers' philosophy be challenged and should they change it up? And it is the 3-year anniversary of the Dodgers winning the World Series. So we're going to relive those feelings. That's what's on tap. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you never want to miss a day, because we're not going to, you can subscribe in each of those places and be notified when our episodes are ready to go. If this is your first time listening, watching, I'm Vince Samperio, usually joined by co-host Jeff Snider, but I'm finishing out the week by myself. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans. We've covered the team. We've watched a lot of Dodger baseball. We have done a lot regarding and surrounding the Dodgers, including being in the press box, being in the locker room, being at spring training, all those things. We're not quite insiders, though. We're just here to bring you some rational and knowledgeable takes about the Dodgers. And today we're going to try to do that like we normally do. So let's get right into it. It was another day of no baseball on Thursday. The World Series starts today on Friday. And, we've talked about kind of rooting interest, who is, former Dodgers on each team, whatever the case is. I personally don't have a preference of who wins. I can find justifications in each, with the major justifications, I guess, being if the Diamondbacks finish this off, them beating the Dodgers feels less fluky, maybe. And if the Rangers win, then the Dodgers division rival doesn't win. I don't know any Diamondbacks fans personally, other than Locked On Diamondbacks host Millard. Other than that, I don't know any personal Diamondbacks fans, so that doesn't really affect me too much. But we're going to talk about Mark Walter. If you don't know who Mark Walter is, he is the controlling owner of the Dodgers, of part of the Guggenheim Group. And Dylan Hernandez of the LA Times wrote an article. Basically, the headline is, "It's time for Mark Walter to show he really is the Dodgers controlling owner." And it talked about it leads off with talking about the speech that Mark Walter kind of gave after the Dodgers won the World Series, which we all remember, and we all know that went on a little bit too long. But regardless of that, I wasn't really worried about Mark Walter's speech at that time anyways. I was kind of was worried about him just stop talking so everyone else can talk, so the Dodgers can start their celebration and we can see them celebrate. But it says that Mark Walter, that moment kind of showed that he's out of touch, and it was, for the most part, viewed as harmless. But now he says the absence of leadership feels like a problem. And he says Dodgers heading to the most important offseason, and, blah, 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 blah. He says, where's the owner to challenge Friedman on his philosophy? Where's the owner to interject common sense into the conversation? Where's the owner to reopen his checkbook and implore the baseball operations department to spend whatever it takes to ensure the Dodgers don't have another year like this? Walter is the controlling owner of the Dodgers. He's the person in charge. He has to start acting like it. And, Dylan Hernandez has a job. And, at this point, I don't fault him for this type of article. But as far as we know, or what we've been told and taking at face value from Andrew Friedman and everybody else, like the Dodgers have been willing to spend. There's no number he specifically has every, blah 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 blah, all that type of stuff. Like, so reopening the checkbook, I don't think is really something. I don't. The pressure, if there was pressure to get under the luxury tax, I I honestly feel like it's more about the draft pick dropping than it is the actual money. So I don't feel like that's coming from, above ownership. I feel like Andrew Friedman, hates the fact that if they could have got under the luxury tax, then he doesn't have to have the draft pick loss or drop or whatever the case is. But there's, you know, some sense of, I don't know about truth, but I can understand a small part of this, and I can be like, okay, challenging owner, caring more about the Dodgers losing in the postseason, and it's just like the last 2 years has now kind of marred what this Dodgers run of postseason appearances has been, um, because up until that, like before 2 years ago, you could say, okay, it was easier to sell it as successful overall in the sense of, okay, you have a World Series title, you made the World Series 3 out of 4 years, you should have two World Series titles, but one team was caught cheating that beat you, and your string of 2016 they made the NLCS, 2017 they made the World Series, 2018 they made the World Series, 2019 they lost in the division series, but 2020 they won the World Series, 2021 they made the NLCS. Like that was a string of satisfactory enough results in the postseason. But now you have it the last 2 years, lost in NLDS, one both to division rivals, one a little bit more embarrassing in the sense that they got swept, the other one a little bit more embarrassing in the sense of the Padres were kind of, their in-season rival that year specifically. So I can understand that, but how often or how many times is the owner stepping in been beneficial, like extremely beneficial? Or how many people, think of all teams that their owners, and think about if that team is successful in regular season, successful in the postseason, things of that nature. And one, name that comes up to me is Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is maybe too involved with the Cowboys, and they've had a little recent string of success the last few years making the postseason, but losing in the postseason has kind of become their calling card. You think of, you know, the Dallas Mavericks and Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban's, very involved, a very involved owner, and they do have championship, to sit back on, but also they have, a lot of exits in the postseason. And, what do you consider success when you're running a team? Being in the postseason every year or winning World Series? And if it's winning World Series or winning championships, there's not a lot of precedent for an owner being very in the weeds, demanding things of that nature to really show the success of championship. Mark Cuban, the Mavericks have one championship or two, one or two, either way. The Cowboys haven't won a championship since the 90s, the mid 90s. So at that, and you think of other owners and you don't necessarily think of success or instant success. So Mark Walter kind of stepping in. Yeah, can he challenge Andrew Friedman a little bit? Can he, say, hey guys, let's show a little bit more aggressiveness? Yeah, but beyond that, I think it's just trying to find somebody else to blame this on, and I don't necessarily think Mark Walter is that guy. And one thing that Friedman has done is built a sustainable winner, and I think that's what they're looking for. And I don't think it's a matter of the Dodgers are making money. They don't really, the ownership doesn't care as long as the fans keep coming and everything else. And I just don't see it that way. I just think that I think it is more on maybe Friedman and the way they've kind of run things. And we'll talk about that in the next segment of, should that philosophy be challenged? But I don't think it's, Mark Walter stepping in and saying, hey, blah, 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 blah. Do we need to do this? If anything, like Stan Kasten should be that guy. That makes more sense. So that Dodger philosophy, should it be challenged? What do we think it is now? That's what we're gonna talk about. But first, we're gonna talk about something else called Jase Medical. So check it out. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, and it's important to be prepared. And there's a solution for that, and it's called Jace Medical, and it's specifically called the Jace case. The Jace case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can get the Jace case customized to your needs. If you have specific needs, that are different than maybe what the normal Jace case comes, you can customize your case and add or move around or create your custom Jace case based on your life-saving medications that meet your needs. And how do you find those needs? Well, when you sign up and log and get online at jasemedical.com, you kind of figure things out of what you need and you fill it out, and you might consult with a physician, and then they can kind of help out and say, okay, you need this, you need this, you need this. Boom, you sign up, you pay for it, your Jace case comes a few days later, and now you're prepared in the case that something happens in the world. And we don't know what's going to happen in the world all the time, but we know that the Jace case can help you out. All it takes is online form, talk to a physician, get your Jace case created, and you move forward. So don't get caught unprepared. Go get your Jace case today at jasemedical.com. And if you use the code locked on at jasemedical.com, you'll get $20 discount at checkout on your order. So that's promo code locked on at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to subscribe and listen every day and become an everydayer wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All right. So the other part of the article, and also we got a question about it, is I'll quote the article right now. It says, quote, in Walter's absence, the once cutting edge baseball operations department has become a caricature of itself, now paralyzed by its insistence on winning every deal. Friedman once said that taking a rational approach with every free agent will cause a team finishing third in the bidding each time, but he has nonetheless remained conservative in his pursuit of high end players. The Dodgers won't do anything significant unless a bargain is involved. And then I got a question from Esteban at Esteban77. He says, do you feel or sense that in a weird way the Dodgers feel arrogant at times when they face an opponent? Or in that same light, should they be given this ultra high favoritism when they have failed 2 years in a row, being linked to all these free agents, but they've haven't really signed any of those big name free agents? He says, is it time to poop or get off the pot or make the move no matter the cost? He says he's tired of everyone saying the Dodgers are a better team on paper, or as fans, we should have rewarded them for being bad in October. And I do think we're at the point that Friedman's philosophy, in a sense, can be challenged a bit. I do think they have gotten very conservative in recent years, and it's kind of gone with the fact of a new trade deadline, without the waiver deadline, and then the new trade, the new operations around the trade deadline where there's an extra team in the postseason, and it has added more teams to the mix of who's actually selling and who's buying. I think that has been a part of it. So yeah, prices are going to be high. You have to pay, more premium prices than you did before if you want to acquire, a really good starting pitcher or a hitter or anything of that nature at the deadline. Which is why I think like free agency is a way for the Dodgers to attack if they don't want to get into the trade market. And it's been in the past, the Dodgers have maybe gone into the season still with a strong roster, but maybe not the strongest it could have been if they had signed a bigger name free agent. But with the caveat being that they're going to make that trade at the deadline that pushes them, in what in their minds is over the top. So, the Dodgers for a while were there was a string of 4 or 5 years where the Dodgers had acquired the top three, if not the best player traded at the deadline. And that happened, Darvish was one of the best players traded at that deadline in 2017. Revisionist history for some Dodger fans is that they should have went after Justin Verlander, and they made the wrong choice. Verlander wasn't traded at that specific deadline; he was traded at the waiver deadline, and at the time, he wasn't a better pitcher than Darvish was. If you think he had better stuff or was going to play better in the future, maybe you did think that in 2017, but at the time, it wasn't necessarily that clear. And and then they got different guys throughout the years to kind of help them. Max Scherzer and Trey Turner, like that happened just 2 years ago. Like it's not a matter of and look at that deal specifically. Like Trey Turner and Max Scherzer, did it win the Dodgers a World Series? No, it didn't win them a World Series. It got them into the NLCS. Trey Turner and Max Scherzer did help the Dodgers get to the NLCS, and it didn't even help them win the division that year. Like they were chasing the Giants or trying to, beat the Giants, and they didn't beat the Giants after acquiring Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. Like it didn't help them win that division that year. It did help them get to the NLCS, but it didn't help them win the World Series. And not that they lost that trade per se. I guess you could say that depending on how you feel, but like, Josiah Gray was an all-star starting pitcher last year. The Dodgers could have used one of those. Keibert Ruiz has turned himself into a decent enough catcher and definitely would be an upgrade over Austin Barnes if you made him the backup catcher. Well, the Dodgers have been better off not making that trade, and they probably still would have not won the division. And you can't say for sure that they wouldn't have won a wild card game and the NLDS against the Giants. Like we don't know, but I think these last 2 years have really kind of marred it. But again, the last 2 years they have been a little bit less aggressive in the sense of like the names that they're getting, but also it's a matter of nobody really traded at the deadline the last 2 years has been, oh my God, like this guy changed the whole trajectory of the team, and even free agency, like Trey Turner ended up having decent numbers, but that was led by a very hot last 2 months of the season. And then in the postseason, he was hot until he wasn't. And then you have Philly fans wanting to trade him and things of that nature after the series because he ended on a cold streak. Xander Bogaerts didn't have that great of a year in San Diego, and now he has 10 more years there. Carlos Correa probably could have helped out the Dodgers, especially at shortstop, would have been an upgrade offensively. But and the Twins did win a series for the first time in a long time. But, I don't know if it would have changed the Dodgers' fortunes in the sense of they would have beat the Diamondbacks. And it's one of those things where, on top of all that, you're asking for the Dodgers, oh, get the best players. Oh, sign more players. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Get all this, blah, blah, blah. Look at the team in the World Series. Yeah, one team, the Rangers, they did spend. They did, make the big moves at the deadline. Okay, that's one team. Look at the other team that, one, beat the Dodgers and is in the same division, same, side of the bracket in the NL. The Diamondbacks don't have any. Their high-priced free agent is sitting at home, Madison Bumgarner, and he's been sitting at home for half the season. And, they did make some moves at the deadline. They got, Paul Sewald, and he's been their closer, and he's been good for them in the postseason. They got Tommy Pham, who's had a good series against the Dodgers, had a big home run in Game 6. He did help them, but Tommy Pham had less of an impact than Kike did after the trade deadline. And it just happened to be that they made the World Series, and Tommy Pham has had some moments, but he's not a game changer by any sense. So it's just one of those things where, like, how can you see the Dodgers keep losing to teams that we believe is inferior and, blah, blah, blah. And then you want the Dodgers to just, next year, let's just go get more players and more. They've had the players. They've had all-star caliber team. Like they've had teams with multiple all-stars. They've had years where they had Clayton Kershaw and Zach Green. They had two of the best three pitchers in baseball at the time that year, and they still lost. Like it's not. There's not a secret sauce to it, and for it to all be kind of formulated into this. Oh, blah, blah. The players have to perform sometimes, and sometimes they don't. And where's this Dodger team last year or 2 years ago, or last year or this year? Probably the best team they could have put on paper out there. No, but were they good enough to at least beat the teams that they played in the first round? Yes, and they didn't. It didn't happen. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, oh, you need to go sign more players and blah blah blah, and that's the solution, because Mookie Betts is $300 million guy, Freddie Freeman $160 million guy, and in this October they had a combined one hit in 3 games. If you sign two more $200 million guys, that doesn't guarantee that they're going to have hits in the postseason. So for me, I do think that their philosophy needs to shift a little bit. I do think they can be a little bit more aggressive. I do think they can, make some adjustments to how they build a team and how they look at the postseason and how they look at the regular season. But I don't think, it's a major shift, or I don't think it's something that, that is some major flaw. I just think the last 2 years have made it look worse. But I do think that they can make some changes, but I don't think it's a whole on shift. I don't think it's Mark Walters, you know, can like, I don't think it's because of him. I don't think it's any of that. I think the players haven't performed when it came down to it. They maybe could have given themselves a better shot. And I do think that they can be a little bit more aggressive, especially right now. Like, you signed Mookie Betts to that long deal. You signed Freddie Freeman to, that longish deal. I do think you need to take advantage of them being on the team and, maybe be a little bit more aggressive. But also, they also have to perform when it comes down to it, and everyone else around them has to perform. If Dodgers would have just performed exactly how they performed in the regular season, they would have at least won the first series. And then, who knows what happens in the next round. But that's how I feel about it. If you have different feelings, you're always welcome to share them in the YouTube comments, or send them our way and we can discuss. There's a lot of off season to talk about, and I'm not saying I'm right in the sense of how they should go about it or anything like that. I'm just saying that sometimes it just doesn't work out, and baseball is weird right now in the sense of the postseason. So on this day, 3 years ago, the Dodgers won the World Series. We're going to talk about just how that game was, how those feelings were, and hopefully we can get that feeling back soon. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. If free Thanksgiving sounds great to you, then Ibotta is here to help with that, because Ibotta can give you cash back and help make sure your Thanksgiving table is complete. Because who wants turkey without gravy? Who wants rolls without butter? And who wants ham without whatever you put ham on? So, or whatever you put on ham. So, big holidays mean big family get-togethers, but you don't have to spend all that money on the Thanksgiving spread without getting something in return. With Ibotta, you can get that turkey and all your favorite sides for free. Starting November 1st, for the 4th year in a row, Ibotta is giving 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. Just add the offers in the app to redeem everything, and all you need to do and get everything you need to make your Thanksgiving feast complete. Shop at your favorite retailers, upload your receipt, get 100% cash back, and boom, you're ready with Ibotta. You can also earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. So download the Ibotta app now and use code MLB to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving dinner starting November 1st. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and use code MLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and code MLB. Go get your Thanksgiving feast ready to go. Let's close out the episode by thanking you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Become an everydayer by listening to Locked On Dodgers or watching Locked On Dodgers every weekday morning. Remember, SiriusXM Can help you out if you're trying to listen to any of the World Series games coming up, or next year if you want to watch the Dodgers. You can just do so with the Sirius XM or SXM app. All right. 3 years ago, we had one of the best days of some of our lives in the sense of things that, beyond family and all that kind of stuff. The Dodgers won the World Series, and the actual game was 3-1 score. The Dodgers won the series in game 6. And what a joyous moment it was. And 2020 was an interesting year because obviously shortened season, everything else. It was already a weird year to begin with. The pandemic had kind of forced us to stay home a lot of the time that year, and it was, there was finally fans in the playoffs. I was lucky enough to go to game 1 and 2 of the World Series that year, but in the end, it was a good or a bad year for some, a worse year for some others. And I think, this kind of brought at least some joy in the moment to a lot of us Dodger fans. And, if everyone remembers the game, Dodgers were down early. Tony Gonsolin, who had struggled most of that postseason, gave up the homer to Rosarena early in the game. The Dodgers were not touching Blake Snell at all until the 6th inning when Austin Barnes led off with the single. Kevin Cash came out to take out Blake Snell. There was commotion and hubbub and all that stuff, and Blake Snell wasn't happy. And then, boom, a few pitches later, the Dodgers had a 2-0 lead. And, from then on, once they took that lead, in my mind, I was like, the Dodgers are about to win the World Series. And it was one of those weird feelings that, like, if you guys have watched the show, been a listener or watched before, that I'm not necessarily the most optimistic person when it comes to the postseason. But that year, like, as soon as the Dodgers came back and beat the Braves, I was like, okay, the Dodgers are winning the World Series this year. I just thought they were that much better than the Braves. I didn't think that it was, going to be much of anything. And honestly, the Dodgers should have won in 5 games, but we all remember what happened in game 4 and, Kelly Jensen and not Brandon Phillips. I forget his name, but, we remember him breaking off that little hit, running around the bases, walk off winner, or whatever the case was. Dodgers came back, won the next day, game 5, and then that set up the thing for game 6. So, I thought, okay, we're going to win this World Series. Like, we have the right guys. But I did want some more runs in case Kenley Jensen was the guy that they did use. And, he struggled a little bit that year. Mookie Betts comes up in the bottom of the 8th. He crushes a home run. Now they're 3 outs away, 2-run lead. And it's like, okay, they're definitely going to win the World Series now. And, after Gonsolin, it was just a dominant performance by, guys that had been good for the Dodgers that year. And guys that, didn't really have the moment, but that was the moment. Like, Dylan Floro got the last out in the 2nd inning. Then you had Alex Wood throw a couple innings who, didn't really contribute as much that year as he had in the past, but still. Pedro Baez, who's always had a weird history with the Dodgers, got a couple outs. Victor Gonzalez, an inning in a third. Bruce Dark-Gratterall got 2 outs. And then, at the time, it was somebody that we had expected to help out with the Dodgers, Julio Diaz. He got, the last 7 outs of the game. But just the euphoria that happened once that final out was made of we won the World Series. I remember watching at my uncle's house, a bunch of us all watching and, setting up the once it gets to the last inning, my mom's not a Dodger fan, so she had, her camera out. We set up another camera phone just to kind of record our reactions. And, the feeling was indescribable. Like as yes, there are other things that are more important in life and, family and, personal accomplishments and all the other stuff. But, for somebody who at that time had invested so much into the Dodgers in the sense of, doing a daily podcast and, covering the team and, running my own Dodger brand on the side with Ravine Fiends and, all that stuff. And, you felt like you personally won the World Series. And, after all the years of heartbreak and, finding out earlier that year, that 2017, you got cheated out of a championship and, all that just added up to, it finally happened, pure joy, celebration, all that type of stuff. And, definitely one of the days that I remember that morning going to the store and buying champagne to hopefully pop after the game. And, I remember that year I had, superstitions galore. And one of them was when the Dodgers went down 3-1 in the CS. I had been watching all the games at home because I'm not one to, well, first of all, it was pandemic times. There wasn't, you couldn't really go anywhere to watch the game. You could go places and probably watch, but there wasn't too many places to go. And I was watching at home, and I went from the couch to, I brought a chair from the kitchen, from the dining table, brought a chair to the living room, started watching the games there, and they won 3 games in a row, and they never lost when I watched the game in that chair. So I literally took that chair to my uncle's house and to watch the game there on that chair. And celebrating with my brother, who, we were obviously a big part of it. My dad unfortunately had to work, so we didn't get to celebrate with him. But, celebrating with, my uncle, who's a big baseball, big Dodger guy. Now looking back, celebrating with my grandpa, who, had passed this last year at the end of 2022. So now, having that moment with him is just, even more special now. So it was, and I remember when the Dodgers put out that video of all the reactions, and I think I had even started a thread of all the people reactions when they won, and just pure joy. The pure joy in that moment was special. And as much as people want to try to take that away from you online, or even in person, depending on how your friends say, Mickey Mouse ring, whatever, like, you're never going to take away that joy I had in that moment. Like, you're never going to take that feeling away from me. And it was just, definitely something to remember, and something that, now, for the sake of, I want to have that feeling again, is more so for, like, hey, if this happens again, we get a parade. And I think that's kind of the thing that we missed out on. We missed out on the parade. We missed out on the full, not necessarily the full season aspect of it, but the full enjoyment of winning a World Series. Celebrating, maybe out more or at Dodger Stadium, that would have been a home game for the Dodgers. Celebrating at Dodger Stadium if they win it there, having the parade, just having that moment of euphoria with, a different perspective in life. So, man, it was a great feeling. It was a great day, and glad to kind of relive it right now. So that'll do it for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to check us out wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Get a hold of me or Jeff on Twitter he's at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, Touch My Device Play Podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.